Today I'm joined by two fabulous ladies from Essentra PLC, a FTSE 250 global manufacturer and distributor of components. Emma Reid is Essentra's company secretary and leads ESG initiatives across the organisation, working very closely with Jen Spence, who is Essentra's head of sustainability strategy. Thank you very much both for joining me today for our boardroom hot topics conversations. I'm going to dig right in, Emma, with saying, how do you go about turning a plastic components manufacturer into a sustainable business?
Tanya, thank you firstly for inviting us to join you today. It's a very good question and it's a very difficult topic. It doesn't happen overnight, making a plastics manufacturer sustainable. We've had to set ourselves lots of smaller targets to make sure that we keep progressing along the way. The alphabet soup of climate reporting actually helps us. It makes sure that we get attention from the board and from our executive, and that really gives us a license to operate. And it certainly helps Jen when she's working with the business to keep things moving along.
So Jen, how do you set that ESG strategy? How does it come together? How do you set those targets?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different targets that span environment, social and governance topics. And we really rely on feedback from the business, from all different functions, all different sites that we have globally to help inform and make sure that the targets and goals that we have are the right ones. And we also have a materiality matrix where we look at what are the key sustainability topics globally and which one of those do we believe and do our stakeholders believe are most impacting. So yes, there's various different ways that we come to the target.
So when you talk about various stakeholders considering particular targets impactful, obviously each business is going to have a slightly different slant on ESG strategy. For you, what is that? Where's the key area of focus?
There's definitely some common themes, and plastic use and plastic at the end of its life is a very strong one globally. You'll know from reading anything really in the media that it's definitely becoming more and more of a focus. And then the other one is really around greenhouse gas emissions and the fact that we really need to decarbonise across the world, across every industry, if we are to reach our net zero goals.
And is it, realistic? And we're talking about plastic, so one of the hardest things really to change our usage of and how we recycle plastics. Is it realistic that Essentra can do this on their own? Do you have to look at external?
We certainly can't do it in isolation, and we definitely need help from a broad range of other businesses and from the government too. There are things that we can do in terms of how we source our supply, but one thing that would really help us is for some of the burden that we have to be shared. So effectively signing up to SBTi is a great tool for us, but making sure that our supply chain is also signed up to it will help move the dial and give us more options in terms of identifying our raw material sources.
For the uninitiated, Jen, what is SBTi?
So SBTi stands for Science-Based Targets Initiative, and it's generally seen as the kind of leading body on carbon emissions reduction targets and making sure that those targets are aligned to the latest science-based thinking. And what that means is that any target that you set, you would get validated, and they will ensure that you're keeping the world within 1.5 degrees of warming. So are your targets robust enough, and are they quick enough that you will keep, basically if everybody was to do that, we would all be keeping the world within 1.5 degrees of warming. And that is what the latest science says we need to do if we want to limit the greatest impacts of climate change.
So you talked about your supply chain and trying to influence them and engage with them to bring about these changes. What about the workforce? Do you utilise the workforce passion? Do they have ideas about how to contribute to these targets?
Yep, we definitely do. So we have a set of committees. So we have an operational steering committee where we have a cross-section of people that are involved in that, and they're bringing all the good ideas from their various sites to that committee. We have a similar one for diversity and inclusion. and then that all gets fed up into a GEC and then ultimately to the board. And we also have the ability for any staff member to email sustainability at Essentra at any time and pose us a question, and we get a lot of really kind of diverse questions from people. So yeah, there's channels, and there's also the ability for the board to go out and talk to people on site as well, which happens on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Could they do that?
Yep. So I'm going with two of our board members. We've got trips scheduled at the moment. We're going to be out in Poland, and then we're going down to our new facility in Monterrey in Mexico later this year. And we know it's one of the things that our staff, our employees feel very passionate about and very engaged about. And that's across the broad range of ESG, not just the materials that we're using, but they'll be interested in making sure that we have got recycling bins, that we're not using single-use plastics for any vending machines that we may have, for instance, and really just taking the sensible steps that lots of us are doing in our homes, and that we're bringing that through. Certainly one of the things that Jen and I have been talking about is where we have sites that are quite remote. And I think one of our challenges that we're looking on is how we can help those remote sites where it's not possible to always recycle materials. For instance, is it okay for our employees to have a wormery on site and suddenly become mini gardeners as well? But we're trying to balance this with their natural enthusiasm and passion to try and make a difference at their site, with making sure we also still get things done in terms of the commercial side of the business as well.
I imagine that part of the reasons behind wanting to be a sustainable business are engaging with the workforce, and people have a passion for working for a sustainable business. But why generally do you put so much effort into this? A lot of businesses will consider having quite strong ESG strategy, but look at the costs of that and feel that there's a friction with generating profits. So why do you do it?
We don't see a friction. We think it gives us a unique selling opportunity, and it can make us stand out from our competitors. We don't have a direct competitor base as such. We are manufacturing and distributing products, and any near competitors aren't necessarily doing quite the same as us. But putting that aside, we think it gives us that unique opportunity, just like we need our supply chain to sign up to SBTi or to do more in this space, that our customers need us to do more. So that's really our commitment, in that it's a bit of a no-brainer that it creates a financial advantage for us. Jen and I were talking about this. It reduces costs as well by reducing our carbon footprint, but it can also provide us with plenty of growth opportunities. So we're really trying to bed in sustainability within the heart of everything we do and within our product pipeline, to make sure that when we're looking at a new product, that sustainability is one of the several items that we need to check off. That's sort of the commercial side, the money side. So it goes hand in hand. And then, as you say, there's employee engagement, where the next generation for us, and making sure we've got that talent pipeline, it absolutely has to be backed up by us having the right credentials. We need engineers, we need technical talent to come in, and it's just generally not going to be as appealing if we're not doing anything in this space.
So do you see sustainability as a risk or an opportunity, or both?
I think it's both, Tanya. There's risks if we don't deliver, but there's more opportunities. So we had a small incident at our Kidlington site, and the roof has been damaged on one of the older parts of the buildings. And we were talking about this, and actually Jen came up with a really excellent solution that works with our solar panel program.
So we were looking at putting solar on the roof in Kidlington anyway, and on the bits of the roof where we can. There's various different roof types there. And that was actually one of the roofs where we currently couldn't. But if we're going to be replacing the roof anyway now, regardless, then it's a great opportunity to build in that ability to put solar panels on it once that work's been done.
So it's not just about ESG as an opportunity generally in terms of attracting talent and obviously being a responsible business and being a differentiator, but actually looking at the opportunities that you have to make a difference in small ways. I think coming back to a point you made earlier, it's big and it's small.
It's big and it's small. And I think that's one of the logos that we use internally, isn't it? Small.
Yeah, small ideas, big changes.
Yes.
I'd like to turn the conversation a little around to thinking about the boardroom, because that's obviously what I'm particularly interested in, is how the board interacts with your ESG strategy. How do you feel that they provide oversight? What opportunities do they get for oversight, and how do they provide that?
So we have a ESG committee, which is a subset of board, and they meet at least quarterly, and their remit is really to provide oversight to all of the ESG strategy, all of our targets, and also make sure that we have got enough robust plans in place to meet the targets. And are we doing enough horizon scanning for what's actually coming up that we may not have even considered yet in a target? So quite a broad remit there, things that they look at. And how we do that is we have deep dives on certain targets at each meeting. And that really makes sure that we're looking at things in a granular enough detail to give them the assurance that what we're doing is good to work quickly.
So what did you talk about at the last ESG committee meeting, for example?
So we had a deep dive. We looked at some diversity where we are formulating our strategy at present. We had been a very different business back in 2022, having sold off some businesses. We needed to reset. So we're at a point when we're hoping to be able to launch our DEI strategy this year. So we had a general talk around where we wanted to go with that.
Yeah.
And on the more sort of the more purist environmental matters.
Yeah, it was a deep dive on waste. So we were looking at our waste reduction targets, looking at how many of our sites have achieved zero waste to landfill. And then on top of that, we're planning this year for, I think it's about 60% of employees, it's a lot of our employee base, will have a bonus. The element of their bonus would be around waste reduction. So each site is going to have a percentage target that makes up some of their bonus target on achieving a waste reduction throughout the year. And that is really going to engage the workforce on that, as I'm already getting a lot of questions about it, and we haven't even said it yet. And that's great, right? Because it means that people are thinking about it, and it's really, I believe, going to make a huge difference and kind of push us forward a lot, that agenda.
This is why we need the wormery, you see.
Yeah, I like that. So if that's the topic at the ESG committee this particular month, how does that then get pulled through? What threads get pulled through to the main board meeting?
So within the main board, they've got overall responsibility for how the whole strategy is working. So this is, it's one very small element, but what we've tried to do with ESG to be most effective is to actually bed it in within the main strategy. When we first started moving from sustainable or CSR into sustainability into the whole ESG piece, so sort of 2019, 2020, we were dealing with things on a solo basis and we weren't embedding them. But now, as just a components manufacturer, we've decided the best way to do this is to bed it in completely. So as I say, we have a strategy for how we're going to, when we do M&A, for instance, one of the things that we have in there is that we have to check the sustainability criteria and credentials of a target. And that does have a real effect on whether or not we want to purchase that company and whether or not that is going to give us enough, the time we need if we do go ahead and purchase it to actually allow that company to get up to our standards. And we'd be looking at quite a broad range. So that could be health and safety standards, to raw materials, to waste, to water. So it's very broad. And then again, you can move from the sustainability side into the S work stream that we have. And that looks at everything from our supply chain, anti-modern slavery, through to DE&I, as well as community engagement opportunities as well. So that's really how they then take that through. We've set up our framework so that the relevant topic, whilst it sits within the ESG committee's broad remit, we make sure that we're still consulting the other relevant committees as well. So the nomination committee or the remuneration committee for the waste bonus targets, for instance. But really what we try to then do and how we try to bring it back to making it real is through the Voice of Employee initiative that we have and those visits that we're paid to the sites with directors so that they can see if that's actually connecting up and see how much difference that's making. And if it's really, for us, that ESG is about having an impact. So that's when they can see it for themselves.
And is that, thinking about the committee, the ESG committee and the board, in this formal process, but do things happen outside that formal process, and how important is that?
There's a lot that happens outside of the formal process. I think when you start at the highest level and work down throughout the organisation, there's a lot of engagement that we have with the board on a day-to-day basis to keep them up to date, and just small little tidbits of information that we may pass to them. We got became a member of the UN Global Compact. We heard that we got Silver EcoVadis rating. So there's lots of little contact points, but things that we can really celebrate. But actually, when you take even those as examples to get there, Jen has to spend a lot of time digging for information. I think we're a great business because Essentra is about, there's a spirit of Essentra, and trying to put either a word to describe it or anything around it is quite difficult. I suppose it's the culture is how you describe it. There's lots of good stuff happening. We try to give people the freedom to operate. The flip side of that is that Jen then has to spend a lot of time.
A lot of variety at each site of what the type of community engagement that they might be doing, or the type of wellbeing initiatives that they have on site. So that's great because they're doing something meaningful to them. But the flip side is that it can just take a long time because there's a lot of data.
Yeah. And data is important, right? Because what gets huge measured gets made. So you need that. Coming back again to the board and the non-execs, do you think non-execs can act as a catalyst for change and sustainability generally? I mean, I know you've got a fabulous non-exec, Ralph, who sits on your board, and yes, I think chair of your ESG committee, is that right?
Yeah,
and he's very much engaged with you on those conversations.
Yeah, I think for my money, I think Ralph has made a difference. Just his general character anyway means that he will stick quite firmly to his belief, and it's something that he's passionate about. As I say, at the start, things don't happen overnight, and he's had to go on his own journey and stick firm to get there. But I do think that an ed can actually bring some real value there. And it's just about making sure that we're getting them into the business so that they can share that with other employees so that they can see it too.
And do you feel that part of your role, Jen, is to sort of help educate the board on sustainability? And there's a lot of I think you called it alphabet soup, Emma. And it's ever changing.
It is,
and it can be quite overwhelming. And obviously, non-execs, although they will try to be in the business, don't spend all that much time with you. Is that part of your role, trying to help people understand and navigate?
Yes, certainly. So we have glossary of terms for one thing for the alphabet soup. So that's constantly being updated because the acronyms are, they're everywhere. And then we have guest speakers at least twice a year. So we bring in people that we think will help to, if we're looking at a certain subject, for example, TNFD is on our radar this year, which is the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. And as part of that, we'll probably get somebody in that aligns with that bit of work to make sure that the board are abreast of what's required and making sure that, we're doing as per the recommendations and guidance what we should be doing. And so we have a variety of people come in depending on what the focus area is and what the priority is that year. And then there's just an ongoing kind of education piece from myself and from lots of other people in the business that might be specialists in certain areas like energy efficiency or waste management.
Well, it's important, isn't it? Because, I know a lot of non-execs I talk to find it a little bit overwhelming, and they do have to be across this. There are great organisations like Chapter Zero, who we work quite closely with to support, who are offering some of that education.
Yes, and we've encouraged our board to join that as well. And I certainly know a handful of them have, which is great to see, and it gives them an opportunity to find out firsthand. I think another thing that we do quite well, we were really pleased last year now, we launched a Centre of Excellence at our Kidlington site. It's not massive, it's small, but it's a great way for the board to see firsthand what that means. The centre has a range of different raw materials that you can see, and when you go there, you can get an explanation from colleagues around how they're trialling different volumes of the raw products to see, what's the impact of that in the manufacturing process, for instance. So you can actually see firsthand what this is about, and the impact that can have for the products. So,
I think one question I really want to ask you to sort of finish off with is, we've both been reading this book, haven't we, Emma?
Yes.
Written by Board Intelligence, the Board Intelligence founders, which is all about how to drive quality-driven insights, and it's all about good questions.
Yep.
And so I'm going to turn that into a question for you, which is, what do you think is currently the most important question that boards can ask themselves, or potentially their executives, if they're on that sustainability journey?
I think it's a question you could ask for anything, actually, is how are you going to get there? How are you going to achieve that target? How are you going to achieve that strategy? And really challenging the executive and management on what their plans are. So I think that's, that would be, from a good governance perspective, what I'd be wanting to hear around the board table, whether it's ESG or commercial strategy.
How do we get there?
How do we get there?
Well, great, thank you. Well, I think it sounds like you're making every effort to get there, and it's not an easy journey to go on. And thank you for telling us about your particular challenges and opportunities in that space. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Tanya.